Good evening, everybody. My name is John Vida, for those who don't know me, and I am the Executive Director of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Chamber Music Society, whose mission is to foster the growth of chamber music in the Northeastern Pennsylvania region. Welcome to tonight's installment of our 2021 Music Matters series. Tonight's workshop is made possible from the generous support of our patrons. If you enjoyed tonight's program, we hope you will like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as share our content on social media so that we can bring chamber music to as many people as possible. We also hope you will consider making a donation so that we can continue to bring you quality programs such as tonight's workshop. For more information on NEPACMS, our Music Matters series, or to make a donation, please visit www.nepacms.org. Please note that tonight's workshop is being recorded for possible rebroadcast at a later date. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest artist. Born in Portugal, clarinetist Nuno Antunes performs extensively with a variety of ensembles in and around the New York City area. Nuno is currently a member of the Sylvan Winds, Iris Orchestra, and principal clarinetist with Opera Saratoga. He is a frequent collaborator with the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, Orchestra of St. Luke's, American Ballet Theatre, Albany Symphony Orchestra, Harrisburg Symphony Orchestra, and Springfield Symphony Orchestra. He has also performed with the American Symphony Orchestra, Westchester Philharmonic, and New York City Opera. He played clarinet and bass clarinet for the Broadway production of Fiddler on the Roof, and has been a substitute clarinetist for productions of My Fair Lady, The King and I, Sunset Boulevard, and Sweeney Todd. Nuno holds degrees from the Manhattan School of Music and Academia Nacional Superior de Orchestra in Lisbon, Portugal. Nuno has also been a frequent guest and friend of NEPACMS, including our last in-person concert way back in February of 2020. I have a theory why we get along so well. You might notice that we have the same color wall in the background. So with that terrible joke, and actually before I turn it over to Nuno, let me just go over a couple of logistics for tonight. You all should have received an email a short time ago with PDFs that will go along with tonight's presentation. So if you haven't gotten them, just check your inbox and they should be in there. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to submit it through the chat feature on Zoom. After Nuno's presentation, we will have a period of question and answer, at which point we will open up the format so you can ask questions directly to him. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nuno.
Hi, thank you, John, for that wonderful introduction. And first of all, I would like to thank the Northeastern Pennsylvania Chamber Music Society for having me again. I had the privilege of playing with them already 2 times, and I just have to say I am so amazed with all the work that John and Amy have been doing. They just bring phenomenal musicians to the area, to northern Pennsylvania, to perform high quality chamber music, and that is absolutely incredible. So we're very thankful for that. So my name is Nuno Antunes, and I am originally from Portugal, and I moved to New York 17 years ago, and I've been here in New York, and I've been playing with a multitude of different groups, ensembles, situations, and I find that I developed myself a bunch of little strategies to stay in shape in order to play with all the different things. So I would like to share that with all of you. I try to make it in such a way that it would be applicable to all the winds. So I try to transcribe everything so that it would be friendly for instruments in C, B flat, E flat. So hopefully it will be clear. So yeah, there are a few things that I try to do daily to stay in shape, and one of them is, as a wind instrument, is to try to use my breath as well as possible. So this is one of my warm-ups. I'm gonna share the screen with you. It's the very dreaded long tones. So, as you see, I usually start on the lower note of my instrument, which in my case it would be a written E, but for both time concerns and also so that everybody can play together, I made it so that you could, oh, I forgot to click share the screen. Sorry, guys. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so as you see, I have it in, I hope this works for every instrument possible that we have here today. But so I wrote as loud as possible. And usually what I try to do is to play this as slow as possible and as loud as possible. And this is just to warm up the air. And for instance, I'm gonna just, I know that metronome through Zoom is a pretty bad idea, but I'm gonna just show you where I am right now. Sorry, just a second. So this is 45. So yesterday I tried to do this exercise at 48, and today I'm gonna try to do it at 45. So the goal for me is to each day play just a little slower so that I use a little bit more air. Sometimes, you know, I cannot make it all the way, but the point of this is to expand your limit. It's not just to feel confident about it, it's actually to feel very uncomfortable, as uncomfortable as possible. So it's just basically like an athlete. If you want to grow muscles, you need to, you know, do the exercise until it hurts just a little bit. So this, with the air capacity, I find that it's the same thing. So let's try this. So I'm gonna count out, and I feel 45, you know, feel free to take extra breaths if you need, or just try to stay with me. But I'm gonna count those out, and then we're gonna do this exercise. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, and 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 2, Oof, wow, I'm feeling warm now. Okay, so this for me usually just makes me feel all of my airstream starting to wake up. Also, so this exercise actually was given to me by the first clarinetist of the Stockholm Philharmonic back in the late 90s. And he basically told me, like, don't worry about making a beautiful sound in this exercise. This is not the point. The point is to try to get as much air into the instrument as you can. Even if you spread a little bit, it doesn't matter. Just like try to wake up all of the air. And I remember that at the time, I could only do it at 80, quarter note being 80, and now I'm at 45. So, you know, it's a good exercise, and I do feel that it works. I know that for my students, it has definitely helped. So that's my first thing in the morning when I start. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. Was this hard for anyone? Was this too, no? Okay, so for me, if it's too easy, I bring down the metronome marking. So that should be something that you should also do. Okay, does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, just giving a couple of seconds. Okay, so the next thing that I would like to try with you is what I call a legato exercise. Now, I assume that this is very similar for every wind player. And correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, it's easier to do legato in a smaller interval than in a long interval. So to do, it's going to be obviously, for me at least, easier than. So the longer the interval, usually the more tension we got on our body, we start doing weird things. So to remind myself that all of the instrument works with the air and the tension is a bad thing, I developed this exercise. I'm gonna share the screen one more time. Let's see if this works. Okay, here we go. So I basically created this exercise where we start with the smallest possible interval, and then we try to keep and we move on to bigger intervals, and we try to keep everything steady. We try not to change the embouchure, not to change the throat, not to change the airstream. Now, notice that I wrote a crescendo in each part of the exercise. It's not necessarily a crescendo. This is just a reminder to not drop your airstream, because a lot of times as the intervals go larger, we start kind of blowing less, and a lot of times that's why the legato starts to be not as clear. So it doesn't need to be necessarily. Yeah, I see a hand. Can you write on the chat your question? I see. Who is this? I see a hand up, but if you could write on the chat, that would be great. But also, can I read? Can I see the chat here if I'm sharing? Okay, just give me a second. I'm gonna stop sharing. I don't see anything on the chat. Maybe the question resolved itself. Okay, let's share the screen again. Here we go. Okay, so this exercise doesn't have to be too fast or too slow, just a comfortable tempo. So for me, I try to basically have a crescendo between each note to make sure that the air doesn't drop. So why don't we give it a shot? Let's try this tempo. 1, 2, 3. steps. 2.5 steps. 3 steps. Let me switch the page. There we go. Here we go. 3 and. Okay, so yeah, you probably notice that as you go along, it becomes harder to just keep all the embouchure and the air exactly the same. A lot of times it's because we are afraid of these big jumps, but we have to rely on our basic technique, and the basic technique is the air. Yeah, I find that doing this exercise daily helps me keep my legato skills going. I'm gonna stop the share. Does anyone have any questions regarding this exercise? Let me see if there's anyone on the chat. Okay, well, I guess everything is very clear. So yeah, this is one of the things that I do every day. Another one that I do every single day is, well, I call it a staccato exercise, but I guess it's, you know, it's just to get my articulation going. So a lot of times, so let's see if I can explain this in a way that makes sense for everyone. Katie, yes, I did try to transpose that exercise into different keys. And this exercise, basically, it doesn't have to be on that particular key. I just did, you know, what I felt could work for every instrument on this session. I usually actually do it for starting on the lowest note on my instrument, and then I go from there. But basically, you know, you start on whatever note you want, and you do half step, and then full step, step and a half, and so forth and so until you get to octaves. I hope that answered your question. Great, awesome, cool. So, and now talking about just articulation in general in the winds. So basically, articulation or tonguing is like you have the airstream and your tongue interrupts the airstream. Now, it's very important that you focus on the word interrupt instead of the word stopping. It's not stopping the airstream, it's interrupting. So I compare articulation on a wind instrument to basically a garden hose. You have a garden hose and you have the water just going with full pressure, and if you just put your finger on the water, that interrupts the water. Now that's very different, and this way you can be very fast with it. What some people do, and that's why sometimes the tonguing is not as effective, is instead of having the airstream going, like it's like if they, instead of doing this with the water stream, if they go to the faucet and close it and open and close it and open every time that they want to play a note. So that's what stopping the air would be equivalent to. Another thing to be careful about is the tension. A lot of times we think, well, I gotta tongue fast, or I gotta make sure that this articulation is precise. And so we start gaining tension, especially on the neck. And you know, the tongue is a very large muscle that goes all the way through the neck, actually. So if we start tensing up here, the tongue actually gets more tight and it doesn't move as efficiently either. Basically, I find that for me, what the other, oh, sorry, one more thing. The other problem that sometimes articulation on the winds have is the coordination between tongue and fingers. A lot of times we have a passage that is tongued and we think, oh, my tongue is not fast enough. But actually, the tongue is fast enough. It's just like the coordination with the fingers is just not there. So I do this exercise that that has helped me just both release the tension and also try to blow, try to have the airstream and the relaxation that I do in a legato passage, and try to have it for a staccato passage. So let me just get the screen going. Okay, let's see. Share screen. Here we go. This is not it. Sorry, something happened here. Let me try it again. Okay, here we go. Okay, so let's look at this exercise for a second. The first bar is the first 5 notes of the, for a C instrument, of the F major scale, up and down, slurred. The second bar is the same exact thing, but instead of just slurred, it's dotted slur, so like a staccato legato. And then the last bar, the third bar, is just staccato marking. So the goal is to do all 3 different variations of this with exactly the same quality of sound. So at the moment, we're not going to go for speed. We're going to go very slow to try to control the throat, make sure that we have a round sound like you would in, let's say, a beautiful Brahms passage, and then try to do a light articulation on the second bar, and always keep the air going, always keep the air going. And then for the shorter, we try to also keep the air going, but the tongue interrupts the air, but does not stop the air, if that makes sense for everybody. So again, the metronome in Zoom is not quite a good tool, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll figure that out one day. So I'm going to count us out, and I'm probably going to have to pause to switch pages here, but yeah, let's try this exercise. 1, 2, 3. sorry. Need to switch the page. There we go. 3, 4. Three, 4. Three. There's the second. There we go. 3, 4. Three. Okay, so that is the exercise. So basically, I hope it was not too hard for you, but you try to keep everything the same and the air always going, always going. So making sure that it's not. Also making sure there's no tension on the throat. So yeah, and what I do personally is I do it a few times with a metronome, and each time I go up in speed. I first do a very slow one like this one to try to just make sure that all the tension, to make sure that the air is going and that the tongue movement is not interfering with the air. And then I try to gain speed. So I start with trying to go for precision, and then I try to go for speed. So why don't we try maybe just a little faster? So maybe let me see if I can find. Yeah, this is so odd. Okay, and I apologize for some reason. Once you're sharing the screen, there's a couple of keys that don't work on this program to make the page switch as fast as I would like. But so, you know, we'll pause for an extra couple of beats at the end of each page. Oops. Okay, here we go. Let's try at this speed. 1, 2, 3. Three. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. Okay, so yeah, that's a moderate speed, and just for the fun of it, why don't we go a little faster? Just one more, just to get our tongue moving. I hope this is not too hard yet, but yeah, so why don't we do why don't we think in 2 instead of in 4? Yeah, let's give it a try. Here we go. 1, 2, here we go. we can stop at this speed. So yeah, for this exercise, I usually try to just keep, you can do it with any scale that you want. I usually, because I'm trying to get the fingers and the tongue to work well, I try not to get into the crazy keys like F sharp major, and the clarinet, the fingerings are a little tricky. So in the end, it's a staccato exercise, so I try to keep it as simple as possible in terms of the scale. But yeah, I do this every single day to keep my tongue in shape. Any questions about this? Comments, complaints? Yeah. If not, and I should mention, to all of these exercises that we just did, I usually, just for time sake, I'm only doing it upwards, but I usually do all the exercises downwards as well. Bass clarinet question. Sure. Katie, go. Can you write the question on the chat? Yeah, we have a bass clarinetist. That's great. Yeah. On the bass clarinet, it's all of this, but slightly slower and slightly bigger. Oh, that's a great question. Katie is asking, how would you describe the difference between soprano and bass clarinet articulation to those who play both, or those who are switching from one to another? Well, for me, personally, I find that for the bass clarinet, I need even more air pressure, but also I need to be a little more accurate with the voicing, especially on the low register, to avoid squeaks. So make sure that you are not tensing up as you are tonguing, for sure. The other thing is I use way more tongue, so for the clarinet, I usually have the tip of my tongue around, the tip of the mouthpiece. For the bass clarinet, I actually put it quite, like, instead of here, I definitely go further down. And that, for me, seems to work. But yeah. Can I do double touch? Oh, gumboots, yes. Exactly. Double touching with that exercise. I assume that's double tonguing, probably. And I find I'm not an expert in double tonguing myself, so it's you probably can, but I would probably ask someone that is a little more familiar with that technique. My double tonguing is not the greatest, to be honest with you. I wish I had started earlier trying to do it. I can do a little bit on the lower register of the instrument, but I'm not very proficient with it. Yeah, all of these are great questions. Does anyone have any more questions, or should we move on? The last thing that I would like to talk to you is probably the one that is a little more complicated, more complex, yet might be the most important in a way. I can tell you one thing. So we're going to talk about intonation. And before we get into the practical stuff, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I assume that we all own a tuner and that we all practice with it. And that's a great thing. It's very good to know where each note in your instrument is. But I find that in my own formation, when I was a student, I found that my teachers did not try to or did not have a method to teach me how to train my ear. Because in the end, when you're performing in the real world, you don't have a tuner in front of you for every single note. That's the first thing. And the second thing is there are many, many variables that even if you have the tuner in front of you, it might not help you. For instance, many times we start a rehearsal or a concert and everybody, the orchestra or the groups, tunes at 440 to start, A440 to start the rehearsal or the performance. And about 1 hour later, maybe the room is warm or something happens, but like somehow the group all now is playing at 442. So if you have the tuner in front of you and you're just like, no, 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 it's 440, 440. But if it's 50 people, 49 of them went up and you are stuck at 440, then who is out of tune in this case? It's the one that is at 440 in my opinion. So I feel that training the ear is as important as training the sight. The other thing is to consider is that most tuners, they have equal temperament on their settings, and that's what most people use to check their tuning, and that's helpful. However, it's in many cases, especially with instruments that like us, the winds and string players, like we can adjust our tuning. We use more of a just intonation, just temperament, and that basically means that it's more based on the natural intervals, the overtone from the overtone series. So I'm going to share a document. Let me just do a little change over here. Okay. There we go. Okay. Let me try this. Okay. So what we're seeing here is the deviations in tuning for just intonation. So the example are like for C scales, so that we have a reference. But so the tonic, the C, is going to be, you know, just regular 0 cents alteration. But for instance, notice that some of the intervals, like the second degree of the scale, the fourth degree of the scale, and the fifth degree of the scale, they have just minor fluctuations. So, you know, if you are right in tune with the tuner, you're probably fine. But then if you notice on the major scale, if you notice the E, that is the major third, you have to lower 14 cents in order for it to be in tune in the just intonation system. And the same, and if you look at the 6th and 7th degrees of the scale, the A and B, the same thing. So that all seems just very much like numbers, and it doesn't make much sense. However, I can show you that, and I will show you in a second, but I just want to point out I have also an harmonic minor scale, and just for your reference, I have a chromatic scale tuning cent deviation, so that for your own time you can just look at that and bring your conclusions from that. But I'm going to show you, I'm going to stop sharing this part, but I'm going to now try to connect this other device. Sorry, give me a second. I promise this is worth it. There we go. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna share the screen of my iPad where I have a tuning app. Let's see. Did that work? Let's try. Oh, let me try it again. Sorry. Oh, technology. Okay. Let me just try this. So this is a tuning app that I discovered 8 or 9 years ago. And now I just wanted to share this with you because it has definitely helped my ability to play in tune in various situations and in various groups. So as you see on the top left corner, there's a part that says temperament. And if I click on that, you see that you can switch it between equal and just. So equal is what the pianos are tuned to, and means that each interval is divided exactly the same way. Each half step is exactly the same length. And so I am gonna show you with a D major third. So this is a D, and I hope everybody can hear that. And now I'm gonna switch to just or pure intonation. So, as you see, the just intonation sounds, for me, and I hope for you too, sounds in tune. If you just follow the tuner with the equal, where the D is exactly a D and the F sharp is exactly an F sharp without any adjustment, it does not sound in tune. You hear all the beats showing that it's out of tune. So, for me, that was kind of a revelation when I figured that out, and also the fact that I had so basically what I do for intonation is I practice with drones every day, and I'm going to show you some of the things that I do with it. So for instance, we're gonna, maybe if you don't mind, we're gonna be on the key of E. So the first thing I'm gonna do, and for me, one of the things that it's, the first thing I'm going to do is try to play in tune just with the drone. I'm going to start the drone and I'm going to try to be right in tune with it. I also love this app because it gives you encouragement. It gives you a smiley face every time you are in tune. So that's kind of awesome. Now, one of the things that in a real world situation you have to be is fast trying to correct your tuning, right? So one of the things that for me was harder when I was younger was I knew I was out of tune, but I could never tell if I was sharp or flat. So one of the exercises that I do, and I tell my students to do, is to attack the note on purpose flat, and then slowly bringing it up to tune, and then attack it on purpose sharp, and then slowly bringing it down to in tune. And for me, that helps create like a immediate reaction, like, oh, this feels like this, so I need to bring it up or down. So I'm gonna show you what I mean with the same note. So that was from flat to in tune, and then why don't we do that again? Maybe you. So we're gonna put the same note, and we're gonna start by attacking it flat and slowly bringing it up to tune. Now we're gonna try to play it, attack it sharp, and then bring it down. Okay, so I hope that was that everybody understood what I was doing here. Okay, now this particular app has a lot of advantages that I see. One of them is, like, for instance, you can try to play the missing note of a chord, for instance. So why don't I, let's keep it in D. Why don't I put a D and an F sharp, and I'm gonna play the fifth. So I first listen, and then now, instead of the fifth, I'm gonna play the third. And now, another thing I like to do is one of the intervals that it's always very clear if you're out of tune is the octave. So what I like to do is try to tune every octave in my instrument of a certain note. So let's again keep the D. So I start with the note itself. Yeah, so that's oh, I should mention another thing. A couple of final thoughts about this. One of the hardest things for wind instruments in particular, I guess it's hard for everybody, but I find that for winds it's even more challenging, is blending. And a lot of tuning has to do with blending. And because wind instruments, each one of us has a very particular way of producing the sound. Like the flute just blows across, and we have a mouthpiece and a single reed on the clarinet, and then you have double reeds. So each one is very different sound productions with very different characteristics. So, and somehow we are supposed to be a section and blend in. So the strings all just do the bow, and the brass will have the mouthpiece exactly, you know, with their own differences, but like at least the sound production is the same. So that's a start for them. So we have to work extra hard for that. So for me, part of tuning is not just like be exactly with the tuner, it's also to try to blend the sound. So one other exercise that I do with this is why don't we do the same note, and I try to make my sound be inside the sound that I'm trying to tune with. And I mean, I don't necessarily mean hide, I mean try to blend so much that I feel that my sound is inside the sound of the other person. So let's try with that same note. So I try to make it to a point that you cannot tell that there's two instruments playing. Now, another great thing about this app, and oh, by the way, the app is called Tonal Energy, and I find it very helpful. So another thing you can do is switch the instrument sounds. Let's say that this coming week you have a lot of solos with where you are supposed to be tuning with oboe players. So why don't we put an oboe sound? So yeah, I actually if I know what I'm playing, I usually try to see the orchestration or the instrumentation of what I'm playing, and I'm seeing like what situations can be tricky with who, and I try to, you know, use that sound on the app to prepare myself, to get my ears ready for that, because you know it's all about colors and blending. So yeah. I hope this is helpful for you. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen for a second. Oh, I missed a question on the chat. Sorry, I was too. Wait, I don't see it. Does anyone have any questions about this exercise, this type of exercises with drones? Just give it a couple of seconds. Let's see. Okay. Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you. Well, thank you, Katie. It's very nice of you. Okay, so yeah, those are the 4 major things that I do every day to keep myself in shape. You know, we all have busy lives, and sometimes when you have a lot of things to do or a lot of music to prepare, it's very tempting to just do that and skip these things. And I find that if I skip these exercises more than 1 or 2 days in a row, I find that my form immediately drops. So you know, that's for my own personal experience. Like, it's better to take the time to do this or whatever works for you. Like, just find what works for you. But like this kind of exercises to keep yourself in shape, than to, and that actually in the end is going to make learning music faster because you are in shape. So yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming and tuning in. I hope this was helpful. I'm gonna, I guess now we open the floor to questions. Yeah, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the Northeastern Pennsylvania Chamber Music Society for having me. And if you can support them, please do. What they do is absolutely fantastic, and it's yeah, they're a gem of an organization. So yeah. Yeah, John, are you there?
I am.
Awesome.
Thank you for that, and thank you for everyone again for being here. You know, I actually had a question and a comment for you.
Oh,
or maybe a thought or a comment for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, and I've heard this, maybe you can clarify for me personally as a string player.
Yep.
Is double tonguing something that's not as common with clarinetists as other wind instruments? I from like several people. That's why I ask. I'm curious about that.
Oh, well, it's, you know, it's not as natural for us. And the main reason is because we have a lot of mouthpiece inside of our mouth. So the space to do that is actually not as much like for a flute or an oboe or a bassoon. So, or a brass instrument, really. It's easier for them to just do the taka 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 ta because they have more space in the mouth for that. We don't have much space there, so it's a little tricky for us. However, having said that, I feel that things are changing, and a lot of it, a lot of newer generation clarinetists are able to do that. So I'm gonna have to think of another excuse myself because I feel that it's something that now it's starting to become more normal and more people do it. But I remember growing up, there was Charlie Neidig that did it, and maybe one or two other clarinetists in the classical clarinet world, but that was pretty much it. Like, and now everybody does it. It seems. But yeah, but that's a great question.
You mentioned Charlie Neidig. Something I was thinking about while you were going through your presentation is how much I've actually learned about playing the violin from wind players, including actually Charlie Neidig. I remember when I first moved to New York, playing for him and in an ensemble, and I learned so much just about articulation and phrasing. But also, and I know there are a couple of string players that have tuned in tonight, but all of the exercises that you went through are things that we should be doing as string players too. The first one that you do, those long tones, I mean, it's exactly the same for playing a string instrument, learning how to sustain a forte tone.
Exactly. And like the bow, our bow is our airstream. So it makes sense. So you probably, if you do long tones on a string instrument, I assume that it's for the bow control more than for the
Exactly.
left hand, right? So those long tones for us is to get the control, our bow control, our airstream control. So yeah, absolutely.
It's funny, like everyone has the same problems, just kind of in different manifestations, right? With string players, and we have to learn how to relax. And you said, don't worry about making a bad sound in the long tones, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And just tuning too. I think that's a great app. Can you maybe send me the name of that, and we'll put that in the chat.
I can probably just write it on the chat right now.
I'd like to share that with some people too.
I know it's available for both iPhone and Android and all of that stuff. So so you'll be able to get it. It's called Tonal Energy. It's a few bucks, maybe 3 or 4. I can't remember. I got mine 8 or 9 years ago. But yeah, it's very, very, very helpful for me. Yeah, I feel that, I don't know about everyone else, but I remember like when I was a student, teachers would tell me I was out of tune, and they would say like you're sharp or flat, but they never actually gave me the tools to fix it myself and to so yeah, I find this to be very helpful. Yeah,
and I don't know, maybe you have this experience too, with yourself or with students, that sometimes you don't know if you're sharp or flat, perhaps because the sound is right in front of you and you're not listening maybe objectively to it.
That's true.
So I think that's a great strategy for any player.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I don't know how good or bad this is, but this particular tuning app has like a mode that you can switch between wind, strings, and voice, and supposedly it fine-tunes the tuner to identify your tuning according to that. So because I've never tried it with a string instrument, I'm not sure, but yeah. So that could be helpful for strings as well, I guess. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Nuno and I, we've known each other for quite a while now, I think. So we could go on talking all night, I'm sure, but and we probably will. If anyone else has any questions, again, feel free to ask now. Like I said, Nuno's been a great friend to us personally and also through our organization. If you go to our YouTube channel, there's some clips of him playing from our last concert, the Schoenfeld Clarinet Trio and the Brook pieces for viola, clarinet, and piano. I had mentioned gumboots in that chat earlier, and maybe we can get a clip of that too. That was a clarinet quintet that we'd done uh,
That,
several years ago,
yeah,
which,
that was quite a challenge, but it was awesome. It was so much fun.
and the reason I say that is because someone had mentioned the difference between regular clarinet and bass clarinet. And in
Hmm.
that piece is the first part, I think you play bass clarinet and you switch
Yeah,
to
yeah. And
regular.
then yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe another question is that a challenge, and maybe in what way, having to go from bass clarinet to, was it, is it B flat in that piece?
B flat. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess there's many challenges in general. I remember the church was just a little cold that day. So if you leave an instrument unattended for, 10 minutes, it can go flat. So the first challenge is like making sure that once you grab your other instrument that you realize that it might be flat and you voice it higher so that you're not out of tune. That's one of the challenges for me whenever I have multiple instruments that I have to switch around. Um, the the reed the reed is also another thing because the reed might get dry as it waits there. Um, but yeah, I mean, also, it's I've done it enough that it's not as much of a challenge anymore. But in the beginning, when I started doing more of the doubling with either bass clarinet or E flat clarinet, I had a lot of there's a different feel in the air and in the vocal cavity for each one of those instruments. There's a kind of a different voicing, uh, and to immediately switch between one and the other, it usually took me like 50 bars before I felt that I was comfortable with the instrument, and you don't have 50 bars a lot of times. So yeah, but what I did at the time that this was becoming bigger part of my life, um, I basically just practiced the switch. I just would play. It doesn't matter what. I would play a scale on the E flat, and then I would immediately pick up the bass clarinet and play it and try to see like, okay, you have to voice a little. You have to have a more open throat. At least for me, it works for the bass clarinet, and yeah, so I would go back and forth, and then it just became second nature at some point. Yeah.
I imagine being a Broadway musician, that must be pretty stressful, at least at first, having to go back and forth like that.
Oh, it's crazy, and I only do clarinets, so at least there's that. But I I only had one show that I was appointed to one chair, and that was my chair. So I actually went through the rehearsal process. I did all the dress rehearsals, all of the previews, and so. But most musicians, I mean, all the other shows, I subbed, and when you sub on Broadway, you don't get to rehearse. You get the book, you go and watch the show with the book and take notes, and the first time you play with other people is live. It's like a performance, and that's it. And actually, the people that you saw on the might not be playing, so you need to be very flexible and very fast. And so, yeah, that actually the second show I subbed, I had to play clarinet and bass clarinet, and the first time that I played bass clarinet was about 20 minutes into the show, and it was a solo. Not just a solo, but an octave solo with the flute. So it was like 3 octaves apart, and I was so terrified. It went okay, but I practiced with the recording probably that solo by itself more than anything else in the show. And I practiced actually playing clarinet for 20 minutes and then just pick it up and tune the first note, just that, with a cold bass clarinet, because that was what was going to happen. So so yeah, it can be intimidating, but I don't know. for me, and you play viola as well, violin and viola. So you probably find a similar feeling. Like each instrument has its own characteristics and its own personality. So it's fun, and it's challenging, but it's fun and it's satisfying to just be able to play solos on the bass clarinet and then on the clarinet and the E flat. Each one is a little different. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think every violinist should play viola. Every violist should play the violin. And it only makes you a better musician. And
Yeah.
I too, I have to compartmentalize. The viola is this, the violin is this. They're different instruments.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and read book. Let me see what does that. And read books for musicals can make you play saxophone, clarinet, and flute. Yes, absolutely. Actually, so the show that I had was Fiddler on the Roof, and the guy next to me is a wind doubler. And the next show we had, it was Amélie, and so he had a chair where he had to play 9 instruments in one show. So he had, like, I think piccolo, regular flute, and alto flute. He had 4 saxophones. He had 2 clarinets, and he had, I think, a bassoon as well in there. I was like, I would just be lost. First of all, he gets there probably like 2 hours early just to set up every instrument. That's and just how do you keep all the reeds going? I just cannot understand this concept. It's so crazy. But you know, they make, I mean, it's kind of remarkable what they can do. It's kind of like in the Olympics, the decathlon, right? The ones that do 10 different sports, different modalities of athletics. Oh, those guys are crazy. I mean, Usain Bolt might be faster than them, but he cannot do 10 different things at that level like they do. So yeah. Play piccolo and flute, and every time I switch, the flute feels huge. That's yeah. When you go from E flat to bass clarinet, it's kind of crazy sometimes. But yeah, and your fingers sometimes are like this, and then they're like this. It's kind of funny. Yeah. So were these exercises helpful for everybody? Does it feel that it could help at all? Awesome. Philip Mancini. Awesome.
well, so maybe we'll start wrapping it up here then. Nuno, again, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you.
Yeah.
I know times are tough, especially on Broadway. So we wish you all the best of luck, that things will get better soon.
Well, thank you very much, John, and thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for coming.
And I'm sure this won't be the last time you'll be seen at NEPACMS this year.
I hope so.
More to it. All right, everybody. Again, thank you for being here. For more information on NEPACMS, check out our website, www.nepacms.org. Have a good night.